Hello and welcome to Growing in the Garden State, where our intention is to help make sure everyone is able to grow and raise their own food here in the state of New Jersey. My name is Tony and I am one of the team members who has been given the opportunity to utilize Drumthwacket, the historic New Jersey governor's mansion, as a demonstration ground to show people how to raise their own food. In our first episode, we did bed prep. Got some things ready to make sure our garden space was ready for a season ahead. In this episode, we're going to start planting some early season starts, some direct seeds, as well as review a few different irrigation methods to make sure we have water for our plants. So why don't you sit back, relax, and join me over at Drumthwacket to see what's growing on.
So if you recall from our first session, we demonstrated how to make soil blocks. So again, these are just an alternative to using a plastic pot for all of your transplants or trays. And as you can see, in the soil, all the roots are just nice and loose. So they're able to kind of air prune. They don't get root bound, which if you've ever bought plants that have been in a pot that's pretty small for a while, you'll notice that they get pretty cramped up at the bottom, and sometimes that gives it prevents them from kind of taking off straight away. So this keeps the roots nice and loose. So spacing on chard plants is, recommended would be about 12 inches. In a small space, you can get away with a little bit closer planting, so 8 to 10 inches. So I'm going to go kind of right in the middle and about 10 inches, which some tools will give you measurements. This is a nice transplanting tool because it has measurements here. So 6 inches from tip to kind of the hilt. And then, this is probably another 4 or 5 inches. So you can mark out with a tool kind of where your plants are going to be. You can also use, of course, just a regular old trowel. But I'm just going to dig a hole that's large enough to fit the whole root base. If you need to add any amendments, direct in the soil, depending on any deficiency, you can do that at this time. And then I'm just going to tamp it down like so. And then next Swiss chard right here. If you're doing a lot of plantings, I like to make all of my holes down the road and then just plunk, 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 plop the plants in. But here, we have relatively short rows, so we don't really need to maximize our output for time. So this is chard. Again, the idea is that the peas will, eventually grow up to probably about 3 feet. Those, once they're done producing, that foliage will die back. We'll cut it out. Chard does do fine with some shade conditions, so it's actually going to be kind of happy in this growing condition between the protection of the peas. And by the time the peas come out, that chard is just going to explode and get big right alongside its sister beets.
All right, welcome. Today we are going to trellis the peas that they had planted a couple weeks ago. Peas usually get 2, 3, sometimes 4 feet or higher. I think some varieties might get 6 feet tall. So if we don't give them some supports, we're going to use bamboo today. They'll easily flop over and grow on top of other plants, especially in this situation where we have a lot going on in the row. So we have these cut to size. This is a good resource if it's planted because it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So we got a bunch of bamboo, not too tall for these. And we have a hammer and some rope to get the rope tied up so the tendrils of the peas can hook on there. So I'm going to start and just set the trellis posts up. You want to make sure they're anchored fairly well. So if we get a wind, the trellis isn't tipping over. That feels pretty good. I don't think that it's going to fall anywhere. Put one down this end. And when I picked out these bamboo, I was looking for nice strong ones that wouldn't shatter. And I'll put a couple more in between here, and then we can go and run some rope.
So one of the best things about starting a spring garden is we get to try new things. And so one of the new things that I've been trying this year and that we're going to try here is putting in edible flowers. Some people love them, some people don't. But if you've never had it, it's worth a try. So we're putting in pansies, which will give you a beautiful flower. If you don't like the taste of it, well, you just have pretty flowers. And we're just going to take them. And because they don't get very big, we're only going to put them about 8 inches apart. You're just going to take them and loosen the root a bit, pop it in, and there you go. About the same depth of the root ball that your plant is. If you ever are not sure about how deep to put your plants, put them about as deep as the root ball or the seed. So these are quite small. We just want to loosen it up a little bit so that the roots can spread out into the soil that they're going into. If you leave it and you don't, I'm just going to chop it a little bit. If you leave it and you don't loosen that root ball, all that will happen is that the roots will start going up in a circle around the plant, and then it doesn't expand, it doesn't grow as well, and it can actually get root bound and die. So it's really important. Sometimes you can just give a little rub on the bottom. And these are quite small, so we're just going to use our fingers. Pop them in, cover them up, tamp them down, and you're done. Pull out any little weeds nearby.
All right, so what I'm going to add to this project, as some of you know, I'm a mushroom freak. I love foraging, I love eating mushrooms, and my last name is Kennett, like Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. But what I brought here is some wood chips that have already been inoculated and colonized by wine cap mushrooms, King Stropharia. I'm going to incorporate those into these pathways. And so then that way, as the season continues, it'll continue to eat up some of this other wood chips, and we'll have more food. So I'll show you what we're going to do over here. I'll add a little bit, just kind of sprinkle. I'll just do this one section here. You could use your hands if you're comfortable, but just kind of incorporate it into your pathway. And this will eventually just kind of start to take over the wood chips, and we'll have more food to eat. Now, wine cap mushrooms like shade, they like sun. They are going to want to get wet, so we're going to want to water these to get them to establish. But once they're in, they're in. As long as you keep giving fresh hardwood chips, so different mushrooms like different types of wood. These like mostly hardwood. But whatever you give them, they'll break up. And they don't mind if you step on them. But when you see the cute little fruits popping up, be mindful, watch them. It takes a couple days. Once they start pinning, then you'll see the fruiting body ready to harvest.
Okay, so next we're gonna try planting some potatoes, and we've got several options here. One is, this happens to be a small fingerling. We can put the whole thing into the soil. But before we actually talk about planting, I want to caution you to try to find potatoes that are grown specifically for planting. They're disease-free. They're verified disease-free. Doesn't mean there's actually 100% disease-free, but you have a lot less chance of bringing any disease in. So we've got a whole small potato. We can plant a whole big potato, but more likely we want to cut this in half. Now, as long as I have an eye on each piece, I could cut this in half. There's plenty of potato here to plant a few times. So basically it's a simple operation. But I don't want to put this in the ground as is, because being freshly cut, it's very susceptible to rotting right there. So I want to let that sit for a couple of days, and it actually kind of turns, sometimes it turns black, brown, whatever. This is 2 days old. I actually recommend leaving it for another day, but this has been there for 2 days. Again, I cut it in half. You can see there's an eye already there. It's starting to sprout. There's no problem with that. another eye there that will sprout. So I can plant those. I usually plant them about a foot to 15 inches apart. And I want to put that eye facing up. And you notice that I've got a trench. So what I will do now is I'll fill in so that it's all underground. If I leave those sprouts a little bit above ground, that's fine too. But I still have a bit of a mound here. Potatoes actually like to be, continue to be buried because they tend to grow towards the surface of the ground. But if I have some soil up there that as I go through and cultivate and get rid of my weeds, I can spread a little bit more soil around there, and it buries those potatoes so that they don't get green. If they're sitting on the surface of the soil, they actually will start to turn green, and that's not the best for eating.
Hi, I'm Christina Hyman. I'm a project manager with ISLES. We're a community development and environmental organization based in Trenton, New Jersey, and we've been serving the city of Trenton for 40 years. Our mission is to foster self-reliant families and healthy, sustainable communities, and we do that by designing and providing services in response to our community members' needs. And we offer a variety of different services, but today we're here to talk to you about our urban agriculture work. And Justin Allen, who is my colleague, is going to tell you a little bit more about that.
So we do a lot of urban ag work in the city. That was one of the first things that ISLES did 40 years ago, and it's nice to know that it still continues. So one of our main programs are the ISLES Garden Support Network, and we roughly have about 70 gardens we support, and they might include school gardens, community gardens, and institution gardens around the city. And we provide them with seeds, seedlings, fertilizer. If we find lead in the soil, we might remediate or build raised beds. We could possibly acquire some compost or mulch for some gardens if needed, and consulting and just informational work to help them get them going. We might also get permits for state land or get the water turned on with Trenton Water Works. Some gardens do have access to water. We also have an Incubator training garden, and that is a season long, and we work with 12 gardeners from the beginning of the season through the fall and give them all the resources they need to start gardening and learn how to garden on their own, and then they'll move along to either a community garden or possibly garden at their home. We also do a small production site, and the produce there, some of it gets donated, and we also participate in Greenwood Ave Farmers Market. It's a larger farmers market in the city, right by the train station. We do a lot in the schools. We work very closely with a few schools in their gardens. We have 2 food corps service members. We also have a community orchard with about 60 fruit trees that is not fenced in, right in the downtown of the city there, to provide some fresh fruit to people that are in the area. We do a lot of other stuff, but that I think sums up most of the urban ag work. Did I miss anything?
I think you got it all.
With onions, you'll have several options. One is you can purchase what I call onion plants. So this is an onion probably that was started, I think it started in the fall. I think they're grown in the ground and dug out. But the seed companies will ship them depending upon your what growing zone you're in. And they're very simple to plant. They're more expensive than other things, but basically just a little bit underground, probably no more than an inch, and that's going to grow into a nice onion. They like to be planted early, so May's a little bit late because they will continue to grow and form a bulb until around the summer solstice. And then they start to, they'll form green, and then at summer solstice, they'll start to put that energy into a bulb. So the more you can get it to grow before the solstice, the better it is. So again, May's a little late, but it's not impossible. The other thing is they also come in at garden supply stores in onion sets. Now, I actually couldn't find an onion set. I have actually a clove of garlic. It's the same size. And basically just put that in the ground with the top facing up, and that's going to grow the same way. I don't like those as much. They're slower to grow. The plants are a lot faster to take off, but sometimes the plants are not available, the onion sets are. Now, if you're in a hurry for getting some kind of onion, I am going to show you a little trick. This is a scallion. I just purchased it at the store, and I am going to cut that off. and that's going to go in a soup or some other kind of recipe. And I leave the root on, and I'm just going to bury that right in the soil. And you'll see, you can do this as early as March. These are very hardy in the soil, but you can do it any time, including midsummer. And in about 2 months, you'll see the green scallions that high, and you can go ahead and pick them in 2 ways. One is you could pull the whole thing out of the ground, or you can again cut it off at the surface and it'll grow another scallion. So you actually get 2 crops of this a year. And they just keep coming in. By the fall, if you don't pick them during the summertime, they'll get to be leek size. Some of them will be that big. And you can use them as you do regular onions. You can use them as you do scallions. There's just a lot of use for it, and this the easiest thing to grow. There's several options of tomato growing or purchasing your tomatoes, and I think Ariana and Tamia have already demonstrated how to plant soil blocks. And so a lot of times if you're buying your tomato, they'll come in what I call a cow pot or a peat pot. And these are meant to be put right in the soil. This tomato is a little bit small. I would like to let it go another week, but we'll use it for demo. But the first thing I do is I look at the tomato and I pinch off the bottom leaves. So that bottom leaf there, I'm just going to pinch it off. The reason I'm doing that is because the roots have to support the leaf matter. And the less leaf matter you have during transplant time, the less stress it is on the plant. Now these pots, I like to break them up a little bit, just so that the roots can grow through it. And I've already dug my hole. I'm gonna put it in my hole, and I'm gonna bury it. I like to bury it up to the first set of leaves that I've left on. And I want to cover that peat too, or the cow, I think it's called a cow pot. I think it's made from cow manure. So you see there's not much coming out of the soil, but I do have that, I have not covered up the area where those first leaves come out. If I do, I could rot the growing point, which is right there. You may also end up purchasing a tomato in a pot. This one is quite a bit bigger, and I will actually show you a couple of tricks for this. The roots are in good shape. They've taken up most of the pot. But again, I am going to cut off the bottom leaves. And I'm going to go up quite far on this one. And this might be a hard thing to do. You say, oh, those leaves look so nice. But I'll show you why I'm doing that. Several reasons, actually. One I already mentioned. But the other is, this stem material is the same as the stem below the surface. So it too will grow roots. So with this one, a little bit oversized, rather than just digging a round hole, I'm digging a trench. And I am going to lay my tomato in on its side. Be careful not to bend it too much because I'll break it. But I am, again, trying to bury it to the bottom leaves. And I'm going to make sure you cover the roots because if you don't, it's going to dry the plant out. Unless you want your tomatoes to run on the ground, in which case they're a lot more susceptible to disease, you want to stake them. So there's a lot of different methods, different materials, and I think you've already seen a demo on staking peas. It's not too much different. This is actually a tomato stake. You can buy it at most garden supply stores. I like to get the ones that are 6 feet high because I like to be optimistic that my tomatoes are going to be that high. And you can bang them in with a hammer. Now what's this? This is an old shampoo bottle. I put it at the top of the stake because I want to use my stake over and over again. And if I hit the wood, it's going to end up splitting the wood. So I'm hitting the shampoo bottle instead. And I have several of those a year.
This area up here, we're going to do the summer squash, and we want to create some mounds. We tend to do well in creating about a mound, about 1.5 feet, 2 feet wide. And then we'll plant the seeds right up in the mound. I like to overseed. Sometimes the seeds we get, they're donated or they're a little older, they still should be viable, but you just want to maybe plant a few extra to ensure good germination. So there's our mound, and I'll put maybe 4 or 5 seeds with the intention of thinning it out to 1, possibly 2 once we get the plants are an inch or 2 and we see how well they're doing. They're pretty large. General rule of thumb for seeds is about 2 to 3 times the width for the depth. So I'm going to push these down 1/2 inch to 1 inch in the soil. I like to pick some of the bigger seeds out, but I don't know if that's just really going to be helpful or not as far as the health of the plant. So I'll drop about 5 here. Again, if they all germinate, we want to make sure we take some out. They are very large plants, squash and zucchini. They want to take up all the real estate in the garden, so just trying to keep them in check a little bit. Push those down about 1 inch. And that's it for that.
So now that we've got everything planted, we need to worry about water. We're probably going to have to worry about water for the rest of the season. Certainly in our area, we get a lot of rain, but not consistent. So I am going to water some of the seedlings we just planted today. And this is a watering can. It's about 3 gallons. And I really like it because the spray comes up, so it doesn't go down and wash away my soil. It's more of a gentle rain. And you'll see that. Okay, so I water in what I call sheens. And if you can focus in on there, you see that puddle of water? That's what I call a sheen. As soon as you see a sheen on the top of the soil, then it's had enough water. So I want to go on and continue watering down the row. Now, you need to get to know your soil, and it depends upon the time of year too. This is still springtime, so the soil doesn't dry out quite as quickly, but I give my plants at least 3 sheens. Summertime, I have to go up to 7 sometimes, but you have to find out what happens in your own soil. So in other words, give it a couple of sheens, dig down a little bit, see how far the water is penetrated. And my guess is, yeah, it's dry down about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to need to do at least 3 sheens here. Just keep trying. But if you think you're doing a thorough job of 3 sheens in the spring, again, try it again in the summertime, because the summer it dries out a lot faster. The soil is drier underneath, and so you may have to adjust that. Now, several other options are, one is various kinds of soaker hoses. The water is on here. I think you might be able to see some drops coming down, but there's little minute holes in this, and it's just dripping water bit by bit, and it's a nice slow water. You're not causing any erosion. There are different types of drip irrigation. This one happens to be, plastic pipe. Pretty easy to put together, but again, you get plastic you have to dispose of, whereas this one will last for years. The directions will come with it, but basically you push it on as far as you can, and then you, had it the wrong way. And then you kind of screw it on, and that'll hold. There are attachments that will hook right up to your hose. So no problem, easy to use. You probably could get a couple of years out of that, but you're also risking keeping disease in the garden that may have been in that hose for a future year. So, other options. A sprinkler. I would recommend spending a little bit more on a quality sprinkler. Now, why do I call this a quality sprinkler? It's got adjustments here, so I can go over there as far as I want, or just do a few feet in the middle. The other thing is that these little nozzles where the water comes out are going to clog up with dirt eventually. You can't help that. So this one, I really like it because it has this little attachment on the end. It's actually the plug for the end of the hose. But let's see if you can see that. You're gonna have to really focus in on that. It's got a little pin right there. So if I get a nozzle that's stuck, actually I do this periodically anyways, I can just stick it in whatever hole is stuck. And it'll clear it right out. These actually are parts that are replaceable. This particular model, I think it's a Dram, and I know the place where I bought this has replacement parts. So there's, you know, that's what I call a good quality. One that you're not just buying it, throwing it away if something happens, but you can actually maintain it. So there's actually two styles of nozzles. One is really inexpensive. You can see you can adjust the spray by going like that, back and forth. It'll get a you know, a stream or get a spray, but they're kind of hard to use. I like these ones that have a little handle on it. And you can see, whoa, I can go in a fine spray, or I can, let's see, I can go in if I have to reach a long ways, I can go in more of a jet like that. So the same principle as with the watering can. I want to water for a sheen. I've got a sheen right there, if you can see that. So it's time to move down. And one mishap that could happen with the hose is that I have to watch where the back of my hose is, because I could ruin the radishes that I already planted in this row.
All right, well, I hope you have absorbed some really great information, and I'm sure your gardens are going to be that much better this year because of it. Now, if you would like to help sponsor another family to be able to have the opportunity to grow and raise their own food, please visit us at NOFA-NJ.org to figure out a little bit more how you can donate either your time or some dollars to help ensure other people can grow and raise their own food. Now, I would like to say thank you once again for watching, and that in our next episode, it's going to be all about pest management. Organic gardening, we don't use pesticides, right? So how do you protect and prevent against pests? Well, you'll find out in the next episode. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.